We see for ourselves within this light a beautiful temple. We see a garden that surrounds the temple and a body of water that flows through the garden. We see that the inside of the temple is lit as well by this same beautiful golden light. And here we are, for we have been drawn together by the power and in the presence of God. We devote our time spent together and all of our relationships and experiences of one another to Him. And we pray that His holiest Spirit be upon us, lifting us above and beyond the turmoil, the fears, and the limitations of this world to the endless love and peace that lay beyond. And so it is. Together we all say, Amen. In A Course in Miracles, there is a phrase, the holy instant. And the holy instant is the building block of an enlightened life. It is the psychological building block of an enlightened life, in that it is the point in the present which, should we inhabit fully, then aligns us with all that is best and true within ourselves and places us on the trajectory by which things will automatically unfold in a miraculous way. We have been trained by a consumer mindset, and the consumer mindset is very in keeping with all ego thinking. Life as it is not enough. Life in the present, what I already have, who I already am, is not enough. So we are constantly grasping to get more and thinking we can get more in the future. A lot of this even takes a faux artificial face. You can learn to manifest what you want. But it's interesting, the idea that I can manifest what I want is at odds sometimes with living within God's manifestation in the fullest way. So as long as we are thinking that life's not perfect, but we can make it perfect, because you can have anything you want. You just have to decide what it is you want and go after it. This is a terrible psychological and emotional setup, because your core belief is that life is not good enough. So if your core belief is that life is not good enough, then whatever you do as an expression or as an outgrowth of that belief, you will still, even when you theoretically get it, if you theoretically get it, you will still be left with that core belief that this is not enough. And so it's insatiable. We were talking last week about how energy that is not surrendered to the divine is given over to appetite. Reverence is the opposite of appetite. Reverence is this deep, deep devotion to that which is higher and to the processes of that which is higher, as a blessing not only on yourself but on the world around you. When you live without that, and this world as we know it does not teach us to live in reverence. There's a complete spiritual breakdown. In many cases, you can't even find where certain religious institutions are really teaching people to live in reverence of life, in reverence of a higher power, God, by whatever you name it, in reverence of what a relationship is, in deep reverence to the universe, that sense of wonderment and awe. And what we talked about last week is that when your energy is not surrendered to that, it goes into appetite. And appetite is, I don't have what I need now, but I can get it. Now, what we don't have now, that's not what's invalid. The sense that something's incomplete, that's not invalid. But what's incomplete has nothing to do with the material world. What's incomplete is a sense of our connectedness, a sense of our reverence, a sense of our love, a sense of our mission on this planet, which is in this moment, in this holy instant, to dwell in love as a servant of God, as a vessel of God, as a miracle worker. But the ego mind doesn't even acknowledge the reality that is non-material. So the ego mind's response to our sense of incompletion is to suggest that we will feel complete once we get the job, once we get the relationship, once we get the money, or so forth. Does that make sense? So too often in our society today, this breakdown has taken us to absolutely terrible depths, where you don't even have conversations anymore about ethics, you don't have conversations about integrity, you don't have conversations about being better people. Somebody was telling me the other day about her son and his friends, and they're teenagers, and they were talking about sex. And they were talking about kids younger than I think should be doing some things that maybe younger people shouldn't be doing. The point is they're doing it, okay? That's not going to change. But what I was saying to this woman was when she was talking about, oh, he got in the bathroom the other day and she gave him this and all that kind of stuff. The conversation should be, if nothing else, does he love her? Does he love her? Because I don't know, at that age, I'm not sure you could say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, and that's going to affect it at all. But the worst part to me was not the age at which they were doing it. The worst part to me was that there was no conversation about whether this had anything to do with love. It wasn't upsetting to me so much that at that young an age, 14 or whatever, or 15, that the kid was already talking about oral sex and the girl was already talking about oral sex. The worst part of it was the complete objectification that was involved. The complete, that even from the gate, it's not the age you begin the physical act, it's the age you begin societal permission that this has absolutely nothing to do with love. Absolutely nothing to do with deep relationship. And then we wonder, who do we think is supposed to have these conversations? If you're not having these conversations about deep connectedness within our religious institutions, and we've talked about this. We've talked about the fact that there was a time when they built these big churches, and they built the big synagogues, and people had a more regular type of spiritual congregational feel. But now even parents, if churches and synagogues, if people aren't sort of going there for those conversations about how to be better people, if we don't have those conversations with our children, why are we surprised that we now have a society where we treat each other as disposable objects? It's like the dating scene. You just kind of look through pictures and see, well, this one now, and it's all based on superficials. And not only that, the way people now say goodbye, people don't even say goodbye anymore. People don't even think you have to have closure, You just kind of drop. We're treating people like they don't matter. So if we treat other people like they don't matter, that are the people that you actually know intimately, why are we surprised, any of us, that we're treating people like they don't matter if they happen to be in a foreign capital and we are allowing our own government to drop bombs on them without really asking whether or not that's a good idea? And all of that is because we are not dwelling within the only space of reality, which is the hello, I'm here and you're there. And this has caused a deep fracture in all of us. Now, the universe, as we say here all the time, the deep fracture is that the lack of realization that the universe is self-organizing. The universe is already programmed. The Course in Miracles gives us a sense of a cosmically ordered universe, that the universe itself is an expression, it is a handwriting of God. So when we stand within it, so the ego mind, which is 180 degrees away from the thinking of God, says nothing is going on here. This is an empty space. Nothing's going on here. This is an empty space. I got to figure out what I want and go make it happen. Okay? So what is the cosmically ordered universe? The cosmically ordered universe is where you understand that, first of all, there is no such thing as empty space. That the universe is literally dancing. It is dancing with the eternally recreating and self-creating infinite possibilities for truth, harmony, love, beauty, and goodness for all living things. And that our purpose living within any holy instant is that we are aligned with the energies of this perfectly cosmically ordered universe, that we might be attracting its highest elements and extending its highest elements. Now, in that place, you're not asking, should I be elsewhere? Because you know that in a cosmically ordered universe, wherever you are is it. And whatever life you're inhabiting is it. Now, I must say, when you are living in this place, if you're supposed to get out of this room, you will hear a voice in your head say, you do not belong here, get out of this room. If you do not belong there, you don't have to worry that there will not be, when you live with spirit, you become a very highly tuned intuitional instrument. So you don't have to worry that it will make you vulnerable to being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because when your only desire is to be used by God in that holy instant, then once again, if you're supposed to be somewhere else, you will definitely find yourself out of that. In the meantime, in any given moment, within the cosmically ordered universe, you assume that whoever's standing in front of you is it. Whatever situation you are in is it. You're thinking about how many times have you found, well, I don't like my apartment's not nice enough, if only I had a bigger one. And the game you're playing with your mind is, if I had a bigger apartment, I would put my pictures up on the wall. If I had a bigger apartment, I would organize it. If I had a bigger apartment, I would make it nice, right? Because what isn't good enough. And if I change it on the material plane, it will be better. But there still you are coming from lack. Coming from abundance, from A Course in Miracles perspective, is wherever you are and whatever you have, are you giving it everything you have? You know, we laugh here sometimes. You go to the therapist and the therapist says, is this relationship, is it really giving you? Is it really giving you everything that you need? Are your needs getting met here? Are your needs getting met here? And notice how, and some therapists are totally hip to all this, don't get me wrong, this is not a criticism of therapy, but you see where it's of the ego and where it's of the spirit. Because of the spirit, the psychotherapeutic process would not be, is this relationship giving you everything you need? It would be, in this relationship, do you feel you are rising to the occasion and really being the best that you can be and giving everything that you have? Now that's a 180-degree different attitude. And the Course in Miracles says only what you are not giving can be lacking in any situation. So the ego says, I'm to go into any situation with this gimme attitude. It is not just a consumer mentality in economics. It is a consumer mentality in economics because it is a consumer mentality in terms of our personal orientation to life. It's about gimme, gimme, gimme. Gimme, gimme, gimme. What am I getting? Gimme, gimme, gimme. And the gimme, gimme, gimme comes from the fact that we do not realize who we are. Because when we realize who we are, we realize we already are everything. The Course in Miracles talks about the relationship between being and having. The key to having is being. The key to having is not thinking, I don't have it, so I need to go get it. The key to having is knowing who you are, taking care of your state of being, and then what that does is it programs the universe to automatically bring to you whatever is necessary in order to flush out and to fill out that picture of that which you have chosen to be. Does that make sense? So if you have chosen to be the man or woman, that's what you want to be. You want to be the man of God that God would have you be. You want to be the woman of God that God would have you be. Then the universe literally, it just flows everything to your door. It sends everything to your door that could possibly create the platform for you to dwell at that space. So the Course in Miracles says the way to have all is give all to all. And that's by dwelling in the present circumstances wherever you are, the best you know how to do. A friend of mine told me many years ago that she quit a job, but she'd given them 2 weeks. And one day her boss came by her desk and he saw her sort of daydreaming or whatever, I don't know what it was, and he just wrote her a little note and he said, please stay until you go. You know what I mean? Be present. And so many times in life we're not present. Why are we not present in our relationships? Because we're looking for a better one. Why are we not present in our work lives? Because we're looking for a better one. But we're actually telling ourselves that once it's the right one, we will show up. You know, once it's the right job, oh, I'm going to be, you have no idea. This just isn't the right one. But wherever we are is practice. Wherever we are is practice for us to be that which God would have us be. Now that's very, very different than waking up in the morning and trying to make this happen or make that happen. It's one thing to have a vision of that which is holy and true and beautiful. And the Course in Miracles says that's the purpose of our lives. Sometimes people say, I don't know what the purpose of my life is. The Course in Miracles says the purpose of your life is to create the good, the true, and the beautiful. You know, sometimes certain people, I laugh at my actor friends because they think they're creative. You know, sometimes people think I'm in the creative arts. We are all in the creative arts. Everybody's in a movie here. and you're the writer of your movie, and you were developing the character in your movie, and you were deciding how to perform the character. And everybody's in a creative endeavor. Starting a business is a creative endeavor, is your creativity. Starting a website is your creativity. Being in retail is your creativity. Being in science, being a teacher. We denigrate these things in life which are the stuff of life. They're not enough. Like being a teacher isn't enough. Being in business isn't enough. When in fact, what's not enough? Is that not enough, or are you not enough? Because if you're not showing up, it's you who aren't enough. So many times in life, we have plenty of opportunities. We say, oh, I haven't had the opportunity to do this, haven't had the opportunity to do that. When you really look back and you go, well, the person or the element that wasn't really fully there was me. And the whole society has formed this unholy agreement about this. I mean, I don't want to be romantic about things in the past. You know, like make it great again. I'm not doing that. But it is true. But it is true that in our own personal lives, as well as our national life, things aren't necessarily getting better all the time. And sometimes you need to be careful in your life, because it's not only a matter of trying to expand, but also taking care of those things that remain, those things that are important, those things that are true. There was a time when, you know, and I think even the women's movement has had, you know, something to do with this. I think that in my generation of women, when it all became about very important feminist issues, at the same time, we ourselves, men didn't do this to us, women did this to it, we lost the sense of what important role it is to be a mother. I can't tell you how many times I'll say to a woman, oh, tell me what you do. And she'll tell me this business stuff, and then later she'll tell me she has 2 or 3 kids. Well, I tell you, I am a mother, and there is no job I have ever done, no achievement, no anything in the world that can even compete in how difficult it is or how important it is than being a mother. But we've created a society in which we're ashamed to say, oh, that's all I do. Oh, it's only a human life. I mean, what's that, you know, compared to some corporate job? It's only a human life, which if it is held correctly until it's 8 or so, will be fine. But which if it's not, there might be trouble. Right? Do you see what I'm saying? We don't even societally have it that how important early childhood is. And now women have in too many cases bought into this ourselves, because we too many times, you know, and you can see historically how all this happened, but it's time for us to reclaim these things. That being a human being is important enough. The fact you are a child of God is important enough. Your worth, your value isn't in how much money you make. Your worth or your value isn't in other people's opinion about you. Your worth, your value isn't in what your job is. And if you think it is, it makes you grasping. You know, that's what Buddhism is very good on this issue. You know, it's very similar to the Course in Miracles. We become grasping. And grasping actually repels your good. It does not attract your good. Because it's a lack mentality. It's not an abundance mentality. There's nothing like dignity. We have lost in our society a sense of the importance of dignity. Just the things that make a human being stand in value. So we don't worry anymore the way we should about what in the Course in Miracles is called the holy instant, and inhabiting the space of where we already are. You inhabit the space that you are already in abundantly, and more abundance will be added unto you. So I want to say that again. You inhabit the space of where you already are abundantly, and more abundance will be added unto you. We've become people who too often, nothing's good enough. This relationship isn't good enough. This house isn't good enough. These clothes aren't good enough. Nothing's good enough. And when you become a student of the Course, you realize this is just my head. This is not about my circumstances. This is about my head. That doesn't mean you're immediately evolved beyond it, but you at least see that, no, this is my insanity. This is not about my apartment, not about my house, not about my money, not about my relationship, not about my body. It's about me and my own self-hatred, which is the ego mind. Because the ego mind does not want you to dwell fully in happiness and in peace in the holiness of reverence and awe and beauty and wonderment. Why? Because that is the death of the ego. And so the holy instant is where we practice moment by moment by moment. We talk here all the time. You know, you wake up in the morning and In our society, the idea of success is you get out there, you take the bull by the horns. That's a suicidal thing to do. Take the bull by the horns. But in the Talmud, it says that over every blade of grass, there is an angel. Grow, grow, grow. So when you are at rest, it's much like yoga. It's psychological and spiritual yoga. You are at rest within a very strong place. And then the universe, as I said before, is both self-organizing and self-correcting. If there's some place for you to go, you'll know. Because instead of you taking a bull by the horns, angels will push you from behind. Now, if you think that your job is to go out there and make it happen, and make it happen, what happens far too much in life, and boy, I've seen this in my own life in very painful ways. You're so busy trying to, quote unquote, make it happen. And by the way, the Course in Miracles would say, how do you know how to make it happen? Do you know how to turn a bud into a blossom? Do you know how to turn an embryo into a baby? Do you know how to turn an acorn into an oak tree? No, but you're trying to make it happen. Not only that, the Course says you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So this whole idea about you making executive decisions about what should happen next, based on what, and the ultimate there is, how's that worked out for you? On the other hand, the universe is already programmed. The universe is programmed for the oak tree, for the acorn to become the oak tree. The universe is programmed for the bud to become the blossom. And the universe is programmed for your life. The blossom is the bud taken to its highest place. The oak tree is the acorn taken to its highest place. So there is already in the mind of God, you in your highest place. You in your highest place in this lifetime. What does that mean? You're happy. You're happy because you feel that you feel like you're being used. My father used to talk about being like a taut rubber band. You wake up in the morning and you know there's a reason for me to be here. There's a reason for me to be here, and there are opportunities for me all day throughout this day to practice who I am, to be better at who I am, in order that the world might be a better place, that I can go to sleep tonight knowing that at least I did my best. That's success. So the Course in Miracles says when we are in that place, when that's the place we are dwelling in, the natural intelligence that turns the bud into the blossom and turns the acorn into the oak tree will work through you. And so there will be people in front of you, and there will be circumstances that unfold. But what I've seen in my life was sometimes I was so busy trying to make it happen, I missed it. They were there. Everything I needed, it was right there. It was like, actually, you were the one who said the right thing. But you gave me that piece of information, and you weren't the package I expected it to come in. I didn't think it was good, and my mind would have said, well, how could it be that easy? She's just some lady I met at the store. Right? But once you realize that the universe is this huge computer that's the mind of God, you never know where you're going to get that piece of wisdom. You never know who's going to be what, and particularly in today's world. These ideas we have, well, I mean, I'm looking at you, you don't look like blah, 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 and then you find out later, well, she was only the billionaire that owns a magazine you're trying to get a job with. Right? Does that make sense? So because we weren't showing up for the moment, we missed it. And I've had a lot of that in my life. If I have an issue in relationships and stuff, I used to see that I get there late. It's like I wouldn't be fully present for things. And then people would get tired of waiting. Or cities, I would say, well, I don't really like this city, I don't know. And then only realize, what did you do? You didn't join a volunteer organization, you weren't part of it, you didn't show up for it. Because the societal training isn't, it's almost like, is this good enough for you? Is this good enough for you? As opposed to, what do you bring to it? And so that's true about our jobs, and we go, and that's why we're bored. Children aren't bored. Children aren't bored because they don't think they know what's going to happen today. But we are bored, oh, I have to go there again today. Because we think we know what's going to happen, because with the mindset with which we have been approaching the job, we're pretty right about what's going to happen. But as we completely change the mindset and realize, as the Course in Miracles says, that everything is a ministry. One person is an actor. One person is a sculptor. One person is a teacher. One person is a web designer. One person is a scientist. One person is in politics. One person is a civil servant, whatever. The Course in Miracles, remember, anything that is your identity, which would purport to make you different than somebody else's identity, because after all, you're an actor and you're a teacher, If it's an aspect of your identity which is not shared with everyone else, then it is not the deepest level of who you are. And it is when we dwell at the deepest level of who we are that we find our power, our empowerment, and our joy. So that means that it doesn't matter the form of your activity. What matters is the content. What matters is that you have a ministry. That ministry might be that you're a parent. The ministry is that you are a spouse. The ministry is that you run a business. The ministry is that you teach a class. It doesn't matter. You could give facials. You could give financial advice. It's not about the facials, not about the financial advice. It's not about the form of our work. It's about the content. It's that we are all here to be ministers of God. And so then you realize the grandeur. The Course in Miracles talks about the difference between grandeur and grandiosity. The ego is grandiose. Oh, I do this for a living and I make that much money or whatever. Grandeur is, I'm available to God. That's a different alignment of energy within yourself. And the Course in Miracles says that all the children of God are special, and none of the children of God are special. Now, when we approach life this way, this doesn't make us less effective on the physical plane. It makes us more effective on the physical plane. Because when we inhabit the spiritual place of the holy instant, it puts you in alignment where the Holy Spirit then will give you whatever you need to be effective materially on a personality level in whatever the situation and the assignment to which you were sent. Does that make sense? So it will mean that, let's say you are finding yourself in a certain kind of situation and you are just making yourself available and you are on your way there. Well, if that meeting is in 2 or 3 days, the type of thing the Spirit will send you is you will open up a magazine and you'll see that it's an article about it. And you go, wow, I could read this article, it will deepen my understanding. Or a book that will fall at your floor. And you'll go, whoa, at your feet, and you'll go, whoa, I'm going to read this. Why? Because the universe is saying, this will contribute to you being the best you can be when you get there. That's what's going to make you powerful within that situation, is the preparedness with which we bring ourselves into any situation. That's why, you know, sometimes, I don't want to talk people out of reading my books, but sometimes I think the spiritual community, you know, at a certain point, it's not just reading more of what we sort of all already know. It's really about spreading out so that we are asking ourselves, how can I use the spiritual principles that I have, not just to get what I want, but to be the person that God would have me be, to do what God would have me do. That is what brings happiness. There's a term, it's not in the Course in Miracles, but it's said often in metaphysics, that virtue is its own reward. And that's what we've lost in our society. That virtue is its own reward, meaning what's the point of being a good person? What's the point of having ethics? What's the point of being impeccable? What's the point of being true to your word? What's the point in having integrity? So you can feel good about yourself. You know, people talk about, oh, I want some self-respect. Well, do something to earn it. And that's the danger of telling kids that they're so fantastic, that in a way that goes beyond, of course you're fantastic because you're a child of God. But we have this terrible entitlement in our society today. Like a loss of a sense that there is something righteous about standing forth in goodness and integrity and ethics and impeccability. And I'll tell you something, and we should teach our children this, it is not always easy. And that there are ethical decisions that have to be made. And once again, the spiritual community, we should be the font of that conversation. We should not be a place where we're avoiding that conversation. Where if it's not happening in the family, and it's not happening in the churches or synagogues or mosques, if it's not happening in places like this, where are we supposed to be having the conversation? I'll tell you where we used to have it when I was a kid, was in a lot of television shows had it. Now, there's some great television, don't get me wrong. There's some great television in America today. And there's some great movies. But still, there's not enough of a conversation about what's right and what's wrong. I remember telling my child when she was a kid, I used to say to her all the time, I'm really proud of you. I'm really proud if you get good grades. I'm really proud going to school, doing well, I'm proud of this, proud of that, proud if you achieve this, proud if you achieve that, but what's most important to me is that you are a good person. We don't have enough of that in our world today. Like we don't, and so when we see things that are like, oh my God, a good person wouldn't do that. A good person wouldn't make a comment like that. A good person, wow, that was a misogynistic comment, or that was a bigoted comment, or that was a racist comment. The absence of horror is a problem. The absence of horror is a problem. Absence, people think, because we have just fallen for a society and the reality TV and all that kind of stuff where the most outrageous behavior of people not being kind to each other has been normalized. And we must reclaim this. And it's terrible for kids because how are they supposed to know? I remember once when some woman walked in, I said to my little girl, say hello to Mrs. Miller. Mrs. Miller, whoever she was, says, oh, she doesn't have to. And I said, oh, yes, she does. Because if I don't teach her that, how will she learn it? And her life won't be as good because people will know she's rude. You know, I know somebody close to me. I remember when the child was just very, very little. She was about like 3 years old or something, 2 or 3. And I came in and I said, hi. And her father said to this little girl, do you want to say hi to Marianne? No. Why? Don't you think it would be nice? And I'm sitting here like shocked, right? Don't you think it would be nice? I think she likes you. She came here from whatever. And first of all, how could that child expect to know any of that, to be able to even have that conversation? But the fact that the father didn't think it was okay to tell a child, you talk to people. You look them in the eye. You know, these are things which we can all look in our society today and go, oh, it's common sense. But you know what? It's exactly what's gone down the tubes. It's exactly what's gone down the tubes because we're all so busy making it happen. And too many people, and I've certainly been one, it's not like I haven't done it in my life, I missed it. I missed what was important because I was either trying to make it happen or for whatever other reason didn't realize that the universe, something so miraculous is going on here. This is God's handwriting. There is no spot where God is not. Be reverent about this day. Be reverent about this day. And the universe, as I said before, is not only self-organizing, it is self-correcting. So even when we have not gotten it right in our lives, and I've had enough times when I haven't gotten it right, what is the way of the miracle worker? You atone. You go through the pain, you go through the remorse, you go through the humiliation. Oh, I missed it, I didn't show up, I could have been better. All the things that you realize happen in life because you didn't inhabit the space of where you were. And people didn't find you kind because you weren't really present when you were talking to them or whatever. And you atone, and then you show up, and in any given moment, it's like the universe is always ready to begin again. It's like a GPS which is always ready to recalibrate. But we have to develop, from A Course in Miracles perspective, the mental habit patterns. The Course in Miracles says, you achieve so little because you have an undisciplined mind. We are at the effect of appetite. We are at the effect of just gimme. We are at the effect of just wanting to make it happen. We're like, that's the problem. We're nuts, basically. That's why Gandhi said the problem with the world is humanity is not in its right mind. So the Course is a very specific curriculum. This is why we do the workbook exercises in the morning. This is why you train your internal muscles just like you train your external muscles. You train your physical muscles so you can be strong in your body, and you train your spiritual muscles so that you can be strong in spirit. And strong in spirit means you train your attitudinal muscles, your energies, your personal sense of discipline, your emotions, your psyche. Too many of us lack impulse control today. And lacking impulse control is very difficult when you can text anything you want at any given moment. With electronic communication, and then it's out there, and you already said it, and even if you then apologize, it's all this terrible waste, and it is sapping our energy. It is a terrible leak of energy. We need to take back our personal energy. And when you do that, you don't have to go get anything. You want to be a serious player? Be one. You know, some people say, well, once I have a serious job, I'm going to be a serious player. But let me tell you something. I have known enough people who are serious players to know that their being a serious player didn't begin when they had the hotshot job. It didn't begin when they had the hotshot money. It didn't begin when they had the hotshot relationship. They were practicing. They were already practicing the power of being the man or the woman that they were capable of being long before it manifested. And because they were, then the universe automatically brings to you the materiality that supports it. Does that make sense? And that is because your dedication isn't to getting. And that's why you don't have to worry that if you wake up in the morning and you say, God, use me, which is the highest prayer. You want a prayer of manifestation? Make your prayer that God use you. Just wake up in the morning, the prayer in the course, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom? You just wake up in the morning and empty yourself of your own stuff. And just say, may something that I'm about, may something I do be of use to you. Number one, as I said before, it gives you a much better chance you'll be able to sleep tonight. Because there's nothing like peace of mind. John Lennon said, remember John Lennon, I'll give you everything I have for a peace of mind. So that you can feel I was a decent person. And let me tell you something, there is so much power in that. Because when other people come at you, or other people give you a hard time, or other people criticize you, or other people aren't kind to you, there is nothing like a solid sense that, you know what, regardless of what they think, I know I'm a decent person. I know I'm a decent person. I know I try. That doesn't mean I don't make mistakes, but I know it. It gives you a sense of self like nothing does. That you are not only knowing that you are a child of God, but you act your best to act like one. And then we reclaim things like my brother or my sister or my parents or my child or my spouse or my lover or my friends or my employee or my employer. I showed up for them today. Not I did what I could to get another employer or other money or other way, but the ones I have. The ones I have. How are you doing with the life you live? Too many times we're so busy trying to get another one, we're not asking how we're showing up for the ones we have. And we are losing, particularly in areas of love. We are scarring each other. We are hurting each other. A friend of mine once said, some of the biggest crimes are not crimes, because they're crimes of the heart. And particularly for young people, the stuff I see in young people today, just the way, the lack of, especially around love and romance and sex and all of that. That's why I mentioned the part I said about teaching kids from when they're really little. I see 14-year-olds and the conversation is about sex rather than relationship. Okay, well, if you're going to have sex, at least can we talk about whether or not you love her and how a woman should be honored and cherished? Are we teaching our sons to honor girls, to cherish girls? We're not even having a conversation about what connectedness is. We have so much conversation about how to heal from the fact that everything's gone nuts, but we're not having enough conversation about how to get it right, how to live with meaning and how to live with integrity, how to live with ethics. And unfortunately, there is way too much societal permission for that. I remember back in the 80s is when all this started. And I remember there was this man, Ivan Boesky, and he said, greed is good. And it was all this kind of hoopla about that. So from a spiritual perspective, we are here to make right the world. Tikkun Olam, the Jewish religion, one of the tenets of Judaism is Tikkun Olam, to repair the world. But we can only repair the world by seeking to repair it in our own individual lives. Even today, when on the outside there are some terrible forces of chaos among us. But even there, not all of it can be fixed on the outside. We have to actually repair on the inside some of the internal forces that got so out of whack that this craziness could happen to begin with. Does that make sense? And it does have to do with each and every one of us realizing how sometimes we have been possessed by this mindset. That's really what demons are. It's when fear has taken over our mental habit patterns and we don't even know why we're doing it except that it's just what we're doing. So a life lived in the holy instant is where we step back and you spend time in reflection. I think it was Blaise Pascal, the philosopher Blaise Pascal, who said, every problem in the world is due to man's inability to sit quietly in a room by himself. And you really see how often we just don't know how to just be. And I know in my own life, when that is when I've made mistakes. I've moved too fast. My thinking has been superficial. I've been reactive. I haven't had impulse control. And then later, the man feels neglected, or the child feels neglected, or the work was abandoned. You didn't show up, so it wasn't good enough. And you realize, I was so busy out there, I didn't take care of what was right in front of me. Does that at least intellectually make sense? I mean, can any of us say, oh, that has no application to my life whatsoever? It's like a brokenness that only we can heal. So as we go into our meditative state tonight, my suggestion to you would be that you allow, you know,